Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Srimad Bhagavad-gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Swami Prabhupada. It's a short purport, so you may not need to find the Canada people. Alright, here's the verse, text 31 of chapter 10. Pavana Pavatamasmi Rama Shastra Pitamaham Dashanam Makarasachasmi Shotasam Asmi Jahnavi. Lord Krishna says, of purifiers I am the wind, of the wielders of weapons I am Rama, of fishes I am the shark, and of flowing rivers I am the Ganges, the god. Of all the aquatics, the shark is one of the biggest, and is certainly the most dangerous to man. Thus the shark represents Krishna. That is the end of the purport. When we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, we are calling out to Krishna and Rama. Who are Krishna and Rama? Is there anyone in the room with the name Krishna or Rama? Anyone? Krishna. Here is Krishna. Your name is Krishna?
Yes.
Alright. But when we chant Hare Krishna, we're not calling to you. There are many Krishnas. What was the name of the first? Okay, here's one for the children. The name is a bit young for that. The name of the first president of independent India. Mayavadi from Madras. Dr. Radha Krishna. Yes, his name is also Krishna. But when we chant Hare Krishna, we're not calling to him either. So up to today, there are many Krishnas and many Ramas in India. There's so many people have named Ram, Ramachandra, Ramalinga is very common in Tamil Nadu, Ramakrishna. So many combinations of the name Rama. But when we call the name Krishna, we are calling to which Krishna? Swayam Bhagavan Krishna. Swayam Bhagavan Krishna Ekalaisha Aditya Nandakmija Rasika Shekha. These are some other terms to describe which Krishna we call it. Swayam Bhagavan, who is himself the Supreme Lord. Ekalaisha, he is the only one controller. There are many controllers. Krishna here is also some kind of controller. Probably when he gets older, he'll control more, and also have a family, maybe, and be at least superficially the controller of his family. He might even become the president of India, you never know, or the prime minister, and control apparently control the country. But actually, all control, all power is with the Krishna who we call out to in the Hare Krishna mantra. This Krishna, who is Swayam Bhagavan, he is himself the source of all power. And whatever power anyone else may have is actually his power. No one has any power independent of him. So that Krishna, Advitiya, there's no Krishna like him. There are many Krishnas. Many people can be given the name Krishna. But this Krishna who we are calling out to is one without a second, matchless, incomparable. And specifically, apart from all these qualities which describe his greatness, he is that particular person who is Nanda Atmaja, the son of Nanda Maharaj, and Rasika Shekhar. This is a verse from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, describing Krishna. Rasik Shekhar means he's the best enjoyer, connoisseur. How will you translate connoisseur? Rasika, I guess. Expert at appreciating all good things. And there are many other names which define, many names, there's no end to the names that define this Krishna. Yashodanandan, Nandanandan, Vrajanath, Rajaraj Kumar, Dwarkadhish. These names describe that Krishna. And up to the present day, poets, they go on finding out new names for Krishna. Or they, not exactly new names, but names which may not be so well known. Because Krishna has unlimited qualities, so by describing the qualities of Krishna, then there are unlimited names. Just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written so many poems, kirtans, with names of Krishna. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur made at least one new name, or you could say a name not previously known or discovered in this universe for Krishna. Bhaktivinoda Ashra. He gave that name. He who is the shelter of Bhaktivinoda. So many, if we read through the Vaishnava literature, you'll find so many names of Krishna. Who's heard the name before? Indradaman. Indradaman. I saw one in Gujarat, someone in the Vallabh Sampradaya. His name was Indradaman, one who subdues Indra. So that was his name. There are so many names. So this Krishna we are calling out to. And Ram, when we say Ram, who do we mean? Again, there are so many Ram. Any Ramas here? Anyone with the name Ram? No. Nowadays people have all kinds of funny names. Your name?
Ramachandra.
Ramachandra, yeah. Most common form of that name. That Ram in Krishna consciousness, so in study of Krishna. Not exactly, we can't study Krishna, we have to be studied by God. But if we are to, yes, study, with the respectfully study, we find that there are three prominent Rams who are Vishnu avatars. Balaram, he who is generally known as Ramachandra, Dasharathananda, and Parashurama, by whose grace we're all sitting here today. He made this land, right? This is all Parashuram Kshetra. Where does it begin? At Gokarna or past?
Up to Gokarna.
Up to Gokarna. Yeah. This side of Gokarna is all.
From Kirtali to Gokarna.
Titali means?
There's a place called Kirtali.
The Western Ghats.
That's south of India.
Western Ghats.
In Kerala.
Kerala means Subramania. Up to Subramania.
Up to Subramania. But they say all of Kerala was made by him.
Subramania to
Maybe here they don't recognize that. Anyway, this land is all made by Parashurama, according to the Puranas. So these are three Ramas. Balaram. Sometimes in Srimad Bhagavatam, actually several times. Balaram is simply referred to as Rama. And Krishna, he's also Rama. Rama is also another name for Krishna, because Rama means who gives pleasure, or who is happy. So, Radhika Ramana, he who gives pleasure to Radhika, is also known as Rama. Ramante yogino nante satyananda chidatmani iti Rama padenaso param brahma vidhiyate. This is the technical description of Rama. That the yogis, they take unlimited, genuine, spiritual pleasure in that person who is known by the name Rama, who is the supreme truth. But generally, it's understood. All over India, this Hare Krishna mantra is known. Somehow or other. Well, somehow or other people don't know why we know why. It's called Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. Recently we were in a village in Tamil Nadu, and we went there, and walking through the area, and some children, 5 or 6 years old, came up and called out, Hare Krishna! Now, exactly how they knew to chant Hare Krishna, I don't know. It was not particular Vaishnava area, all of Tamil Nadu. Nowadays, of course, there are Vaishnava areas also, areas which are traditionally Vaishnava. But even those Vaishnavas, they don't chant Hare Krishna much, they chant more Narayana, Om Namo Narayana. And all of Tamil Nadu is, well, apart from the deep south and the coastal areas, which are now Jai Jesus areas. But it's mostly everywhere is Ayappa, especially at this season. Here too, it's Ayappa madness. All of South India. But no parents aren't giving their children spiritual education of any kind. But somehow or other they knew when they saw us to say Hare Krishna. How I don't know. So all over India, people know this Hare Krishna mantra. And even many times we see we go on a train and there's some Muslims there, and they'll also say Hare Krishna when they see us. So, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna is what they usually say when they see us. So generally, by Rama, it's understood, when chanting Hare Rama, the Rama of Ramayana, the son of Dasharatha and Kaushalya. Actually, practically even more famous than Rama is Hanuman, and more worshipped. Hanuman is seen more worship. If we see ancient temples, they're not, you don't find many ancient temples of Hanuman, many ancient temples of Rama. But this Hanuman temples are now, there's no huge temples of Hanuman. All over the place, in every colony of every city, there's at least one Hanuman temple. So generally, chanting Hare Rama means Rama. And I chose this verse today, even though Srila Prabhupada didn't speak in the purport about this. Lord Krishna mentions here, while describing his vibhutis, or his opulence, his opulences which are manifest in this world. He describes Rama. Of course, everything is an opulence of Krishna. Everything is a manifestation of Krishna. But some things are particularly striking. They cause wonder. Here in this verse is mentioned the shad. Actually the word is makara, which we haven't seen. We don't get caught in fishing nets. But Srila Prabhupada usually translated this as a shad. So if you see a shad, you feel afraid. Even in an aquarium, they have big aquariums. I don't know if they have them in India. Huge tanks with glass and the shark, and you're just like 1 foot away from the shark. There's just little glass in between you and the shark, and you're glad the glass is there. Because the shark is a creature who looks and is so fierce that he inspires awe. Awe. You know what that word means? It means kind of respectful, respect. Here in this case means with some fear also. Or snakes. We're talking about this Parashuram Kshetra, this particular area. This is Nag Kshetra, isn't it? Tulunadu. The Krishna is outside Tulunadu. It's famous for worship of Krishna, but actually the most common form of worship here seems to be worship of snakes. This whole area belongs to the snakes, right? It's all snake country. There's a snake temple just out there. Quite busy, a lot of people go there. So the snake, if you see a snake, well, generally we feel afraid. And probably should do too, especially if it's cobra. I remember one time we were walking down to the Krishna temple from the Mathura Chaudhry, which was called something else at the time, or from Lila Palace, and cobra came out just in front of us. It's a common thing. So we all stopped immediately. Unfortunately, the cobra was more afraid of us than we were afraid of him, and he went back into the jungle. Lots of cobras. I was up once at this Volur Valley. Some farmers there, and I told one of the devotees that, well, I came in, I saw a snake in my room. I said, well, that's normal. We already cleared 3 out of our room today. So, when you open the door to the bathroom, just have a look inside first. It's quite likely there's a snake in there. So all these vibhutis, that which is something not necessarily fearsome, but awe-inspiring. So when we think this something is something great, something I can't really understand, what is it about a snake that makes us feel not so nice? At a zoo, as a child, I remember there was a man sitting with snakes wrapped around him. And he said, don't worry, they're harmless. Do you want to put them on you? He said to me. I was about 8 years old. And all these snakes, no. Even though you showed me they were harmless, and he seemed pretty confident in that, and they were all over him, and they weren't doing him any harm, but just the idea of having a snake on your body is... You don't go close, even though you're told the snake is harmless. So, what is that quality that inspires reverence? Something great, something wonderful, something that we can't really define. And this vibhuti, or this, that which inspires some feeling of awe, all of these vibhutis are representations of Krishna within this world. Krishna is not a snake, but the snake represents, well, they're both snakes, both kinds of snakes are mentioned. Naganam, what is that? Anantas Chapi Naga, Sautama. Yeah. So, all those things which inspire some awe are mentioned here. Oh, no. Please turn this fan off while the battery is being replaced.
Turn it off.
Just for 2 or 3 minutes. So Rama, the bowman, he is being mentioned. Of course, Rama is the Supreme Lord, but he appeared in many ways to be like an ordinary human being. And Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Yeah, okay, you can tell, please turn the fan back on here. So Rama, he was awesome by his power to wield a bow. He first came to public prominence by breaking the bow of Lord Shiva, which no other heroes could even lift. Or even if some of them are able to lift, when they try to string it, they would become like an arrow, they would get thrown away. But Rama, even though he was just a young boy, apparently he picked it up and very easily strung it and pulled it so hard that the bow broke. So that's how Rama became known first of all as a great hero. And later, of course, by the power of his bow, he was not very well known outside his own local area, but his fame went all the way down to Lanka when he killed those 3 Rakshasas. What was that? Dusara in the forest. They were harassing the sages. He killed them very quickly, single-handedly. He killed all the great Rakshasas. So by the power, it's unprecedented, unheard of skill with a bow, bowmanship. Ram became famous. So Ram, he is, of course, the Supreme Lord. His exploits are described in Ramayana, and not only in Ramayana. When we say Ramayana, the original Ramayana, Mool Ramayana, that means Valmiki's Ramayana. And there have been many other, or several other editions in regional Indian languages, in Tamil, Kamban Ramayana, and then in Bengal, in Bengali, in Oriya, in Telugu, in Hindi is most famous, Ramcharitmanas, in Audhi actually, Hindi dialect. In Canada, is there a traditional Ramayana? There is. It doesn't seem to be that well known. So these are all Ramayanas, and then there's also the Adhyatma Ramayana and other Sanskrit version. And the Jains have their own version of the Ramayana. Better not read that if you want to become a devotee of Ram, because Jains aren't devotees. And elsewhere in the Puranas also, including Srimad Bhagavatam, there are narrations of Lord Rama. So, of all the avatars, Krishna and Rama are most famous. Of course, Krishna is not, we don't usually say, we can say avatar, but we understand that he is the source of all avatars. But these two especially are very famous, even up to the present day. That's why so many people, even up to the present day, their parents give them names Krishna, or Rama, or similar names. They may give names Govinda, Gopal, Giridhari, Madhusudan, all names of Krishna. And other names of Ram, not so much. So these two avatars are very famous for their wonderful lila. Both of them, their lilas are described in great detail. There are other avatars also. Vamana, Nrsimha, but mostly they're famous for one particular activity. There's not so much. You don't hear so much of the activities of Vamana. Just the cheating Bali Maharaj, he's famous for that. Not for much else. Although there are other narrations about it. In the Uttaramayana, it's described how, as the doorman of Bali Maharaj, when Ravana came, he saw this dwarf that's supposed to be a doorman and just walked past him, and the next thing, Ravana was flying through space. He'd been kicked by Ravana to the other side of the universe, so he didn't come back. So, obviously he did do other things apart from cheat Bali Maharaj. But then we don't find so much about the other avatars. But Rama and Krishna, there's so much. And great devotees, and even not great devotees, what we might call ordinary people in India, have been discussing their pastimes, singing about them, painting them, making architecture, building temples, with the subject of Rama and Krishna. And we also want to let people know about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's also, many of his lilas are described in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and other works. So the subject matter of education should be this subject. Who is Krishna? Who is Rama? Of course, education begins with, just like we find in Bhagavad-gita, Dehino svinyata dehe kumaram yoganam jara tata dehanta praptir dhirastataram bhavati. Just as the body is changing from boyhood to youth to old age, and the final change of the body is death, change of body. And who is Hira, who is sober, he is not disturbed by that. So that's the beginning of actual education, spiritual education. Who is God? That comes later. First of all, we should understand what is the difference between spirit and matter. Who are we? We don't find in Bhagavad-gita that Lord Krishna, in the beginning, he starts off talking about God. That comes later. We don't find, of course, Sri Bhagavan is there. That's given by Vikasa. But otherwise, Krishna himself, the words like Ishvara, Bhagavan, later on we find in Bhagavad-gita, Purushottam, all these words. But that comes later. First of all, what is the difference between the body and the soul? Then the nature of God is described in Bhagavad-gita. What is it that makes him God? So that's described briefly, and that's described in detail, especially in Srimad Bhagavatam. And also the pastimes of the Supreme Lord are described there. Now in Ramayana, there's not actually much spiritual philosophy. Lord Ramachandra, he is known as Maryada Purushottam. He comes to show the ideal behavior of a human being. So there is much instruction in Ramayana, practical, direct instruction and instruction that can be deduced from Ramayana of how one should live and behave in this world in a proper manner. how one should deal with others, how one should respect elders, parents, and gurus. It's all there in Ramayana. How one should observe dharma. You'll find how Rama was very much committed to dharma, even though he had no need to. But he did so to teach the world. Now, of course, Krishna is known as lila Purushottam, or prema Purushottam. The Supreme Lord is not bound by dharma. In a higher sense he is, but not, or rather his dharma is different to that of humans. The dharma of the human or every living being is Jiva Sarupai Krishna Nityadas. And every living being is the servant of Krishna by constitution. And Krishna's dharma is Krishna Sarupai Jiva Nitya Prabhu. He is the eternal Lord. So he is the controller. Ekale Ishvara Krishna. Our Samkrita. Jare Joiche Nache Tare Toiche Kare Nritya. He is the one Supreme Lord. And all others are his servants who dance according to the way he makes them dance. So the puppet is controlled by the puppeteer. And the puppeteer is not subject to the desires of the puppet, nor does he have the same rules of functioning of the puppet. If the human breaks the rules of dharma, he has to suffer for them. But Krishna, he's not within the rules of dharma, so there's no question of him suffering. The rules of dharma, they adjust according to Krishna, not round the other way. Not that he has to adjust himself to them, but he does adjust himself to them for the sake of teaching us. And all as Lord Rama. As in Krishna lila he also does. But Krishna lila, especially in Vrindavan, that is free of any rules. Krishna does what he likes. He is lila Purushottam, the supreme enjoyer. But the ultimate dharma of everything and everyone acting simply for the pleasure of Krishna, that is enacted. But it's very difficult for ordinary people to understand. And if we don't understand what to follow and what not to follow in Krishna lila, we should follow his example in Dwarka of rising early, of protecting his wives, providing for his wives. This example as the ideal grihastha, that should be followed. But if we try to follow his example in Vrindavan of dancing with other people's wives, that will be very bad for us, very bad for the wives, and very bad for human society. And the whole result, nothing good will come from it whatsoever. So, these Krishna lila and Ram lila, this has been the subject of discussion among educated people in Bharata since time immemorial. It is not simply some kind of fancy that they like to discuss. In the West, it was previously one was considered educated, or the education was based on the Greek epics and the classical languages, Greek, Latin, one was supposed to know these, and then in English there was study of Shakespeare. These were considered to be didactic classics. Didactic means that they're works which give us some instruction on how to lead our lives. So it was considered that one should, of course, Homer is not really didactic, but it's considered that there are some lessons there about how to live. What will happen if you do things right, and what will happen if you do things wrong. But they're not nearly as valuable as Ramayana and Mahabharata and Srimad Bhagavatam, because even though the writers of these epics, and up to the present day there are many writers who write novels, who they have much insight on human nature, but they can't really offer any good advice because they don't know what the ultimate goal of life is. So, the Shastra, that gives us knowledge of Krishna and Rama and how to follow their ideal and how to worship them and how to be attracted to their wonderful activity. It's not really how to be attracted, it's just automatic. If one hears Krishna lila and Ram lila, if one goes on hearing, then unless one is a complete demon, and there are such persons who repeatedly hear, but they don't become attracted, but one will automatically be attracted. There are some persons who the certain Westerners, beginning in the 19th century, and the tradition continues to the present day, they study the Vedic classics with the particular aim of undermining and ridiculing them. They'll study the Shastra and say, you see, this is nonsense. Ganesh, elephant head, nonsense. Immediate, without any further consideration. This must be nonsense, because we never saw anyone with an elephant head. So, that is foolishness. That is their foolishness. They consider, I didn't see it, so it can't exist. So there are such persons. And there's another class of people who hear about the pastimes of the Lord, and they are attracted, but because they simultaneously cultivate an understanding that is envious of and inimical to Krishna, even though they have a superficial attraction, they don't actually develop bhakti. And I'm particularly talking about Mayavadis, who they may like to hear about and explain the pastimes of the Lord, but at the same time they cultivate the sense that I am actually He, Soham. I am He, Shivoham, Tattvamasi. That is you, I am He. So they may even cry when they hear the pastimes of the Lord, but actually their heart is very hard because of this misunderstanding. So we should understand who are Krishna and Ram from devotees who can give us the actual understanding, which is not actually very difficult to understand. It's very easy to understand that we are not God. Mayavad means a philosophical construct which gives us the conclusion that we are God. But it doesn't make any sense. And however fancy language may be used to, or whichever arguments that may seem to make sense are employed, it doesn't make any sense. Just like in mathematics, you're teaching mathematics. So you can make a whole big calculation, and if you go through it, it looks, that looks good. X squared plus y squared, put it in a bracket, multiply it by 3a cubed minus 2b raised to the power of 20. So and you have that on one side of an equal sign, and you put something else complex, or you have some calculus, and it all looks pretty complex, but if you're trained in mathematics, you can work it all out. And when you cancel everything out, you come down to 1 equals 2. Our teacher in school did this to us. Right? Had a huge, like on both sides of the equal sign, there was these old brackets and a whole bunch of algebra. We went through step, we went through it all. We went through it again and again. We couldn't find out. It didn't make any sense. And then he showed us at one point that something on one side of the equation, it was a trick, of course. It didn't make any sense. Actually, by multiplying them, it came to 0. So that threw everything out. So, like that, Mayavad, it may seem to be good and right, but there's something wrong there. And you can see that by the result. The result is that people think they're God, and they're obviously not. It sounds attractive. You're God. Oh, right. That sounds good. Alright, great. Let's go for it. You can go for it as much as you like, but it's impossible. There's a similarly absurd idea which is quite common in the Western world now, that, well, if you just believe in something strongly enough, you can get it. I think this was all started by that, what was his name, Napoleon Hill or something, Think and Grow Rich. So you have to, every morning and every evening, think, I'm going to be a billionaire. I'm going to have to really think it and really believe it. But obviously it doesn't necessarily work in all cases. Just like, for instance, there may be 8 people who are in the race, the Olympics 100-meter dash, and they're all, I'm going to win the race, I really believe it, but only one of them's going to win it. However much they all believe it, I'm going to be the winner, there's only going to be one winner. So simply believing it is not enough in itself to produce the result. One of my godbrothers told me he grew up in New York City, where, and then on his block in his neighborhood, there was a young boy who really wanted to be a basketball star. He had no hope because he was short. And however good you are at maneuvering the ball and throwing it, you can't become a basketball star. I would think you have to be a minimum of 6 foot height. But if you're short, if you're like less than 5'6", there's no hope whatsoever, however much you desire it. So it's like that. In the Sanskrit literature, the example is often given of a dwarf who wants to catch the moon. I mean, even a basketball star can't catch the moon. So, what to speak of a dwarf? You have to be a lot taller. It's impossible. It's desiring something which is impossible. So one should hear from devotees about Rama and Krishna, who they are. Who are they? They are the Supreme Lord, Advitiya, Asamurdva, incomparable. No one is equal to or greater than them. And what are their wonderful pastimes that inspire us to want to serve them? What are their qualities? See, we may just know that they're great, but if we don't know more than that, then we won't be inspired to surrender to them and serve them. There are some religious systems in the world which don't go beyond the statement that God is great. Prominent among which are Christianity and Islam. They say God is great, but they don't say anything more than that. So you have no idea who He actually is, and they don't seem to have any inclination to do so either. It's just, He's great. Okay, we'll worship Him. It's good for us to worship Him. He'll help us. We have a lot of things we want, and He's great. Okay, we don't need to know anything more than that. We don't want to know. This is a long, long way from Krishna Bhakti or Rama Bhakti, in which, by hearing about Krishna and Rama, one whose heart is inspired by devotion feels more and more, I need to serve this person. I must serve. I want to, my aspiration, whatever I'm doing in this world, I have my home, my family, my land, and I want to join Hanuman and be one of those monkeys or whatever, Vana. Let me even have the chance once in my life to be living in the jungle, and I see Ram coming and I can clear the way. Let me do some service. Somehow, if I even once in my life I can have the darshan of Lord Ram, even if he doesn't see me, I can do some service for him. So this aspiration that this person, Rama, Krishna, they're so wonderful, mind captivating, that somehow I want to have some relationship with them. Not just distant, that, okay, he's great. Give us bread. Bread! Give us bread. God, give us bread. We said our prayers, give us bread. Forgive our sins. We're going sinning, but you have to forgive them. We pray to you. The priest said, you have to forgive our sins. Not formal. We find that Ram, although he's a king and he's Maryada Purushottam, which means he upholds formality. He teaches us how to behave in a proper way. But he's also not bound by formality. He accepted the service of Guha, who was a nishad, so people from, that means like jungly caste, tribal. So people from respectable society, they don't mix with such people, but Rama did, because he was a devotee. The story is there, it's not in Mool Ramayana, but it's, at least not in the editions extant today, but of Shabari eating the fruit or tasting it before giving it to Rama, because she didn't want to give fruit which wasn't very good. Now that's not the proper thing to do. Everyone knows, you don't taste the fruit and say, hey, okay, alright, you take it. But she did, that was a symptom of her bhakti. And Rama would, no one should ever take the remnants of anyone else, not a proper thing to do. Especially we don't give the Supreme Lord our remnants, but Rama accepted it because he was not bound by formality. He accepted the love of his devotee. So such a person who is on one side very strict about formality, but on the other side is so open and kind to his devotees, such a person we want to serve. In the very beginning of Ramayana, there is a description of Lord Rama's wonderful qualities. Not just his behavioral qualities. He's very kind and gentle. Generally he's gentle, but he can be very fierce also to those who are misbehaving. And forgiving to those who are, they're different kinds of misbehaving. Someone may misbehave, but they just need correcting. And someone's misbehaving because they are sworn to, or they're dedicated to being rascals. So such people, they are destroyed. They're those who are incorrigible. That means they can't be corrected. They don't want to correct themselves. For them, bad is right. They think doing wrong, this is the right thing to do. Ashuchi Vrata, Bhagavad-gita, Lord Krishna describes. They are sworn to unclean, impure activities. So that is also a quality. Destroying the demons is also a quality of Lord Rama, by which he endears himself to the devotees. So Ram is such a wonderful person. He's not just great, but his quality. Of course, all these things can be said about Krishna also. I'm speaking more about Rama today. Yes. Why? Well, why not? Why not speak about Rama? Ramachandra. Now one point is that although the lila of Lord Rama is by nature Ananda Chinmaya Rasa, it is fully blissful, spiritual, full of transcendental tastes, it appears to be very sad. Even though Ram is so good and so fair and never did anything wrong in his life, even slightly, still he had to suffer such a cruel fate, it seems. Of course, for him, there is no fate. Fate means the results of our previous activities. So why is that? I was saying it seems sad, but that sadness is also a kind of pleasure. Otherwise, why do people again and again recite it and take pleasure in reciting Ramayana? It's actually very joyful to hear. In material life, the happiness is sadness, and the sadness is sadness. And in spiritual life, the happiness is happiness, and the sadness is also happiness. But why did that happen? Now, if we we do Puranic research, we can find various reasons why different things happen. We find different demons, they took different forms in different lilas because of previous activities. Just like this man who criticized Lord Ram, he said to his wife that, you see, I'm not like the Ram who takes his wife back. Then he had to became in Krishna Lila this washerman, so that's stated, who had his head removed by Lord Krishna in Mathura. I believe I got that right. That's from Garga Samhita. So like that. And even about Krishna, it seems that he may have to suffer, cursed by Gandhari. Now Krishna, he's not subject to curses. But that's why these points we have to understand and discuss, and this is the real subject matter of education, to discuss all these points in great detail. This way our mind will be attracted to Krishna, to Rama, and we'll have a clear understanding. Otherwise what happens is, people come and they say things like this. You see, Krishna's also an ordinary person. He was cursed by Gandhari, that just as you made all this war, actually it wasn't Krishna, it was Duryodhana's fault, or even more so Dhritarashtra's fault. But she blamed it on Krishna. Then you all have to lose your family in the same way. But of course Krishna, he had his purpose. In the Yadu dynasty, the Yadu dynasty that when the time came for Krishna to leave this world, they also had to leave. But how will they leave? They shouldn't just die. And nor can they be killed by anyone. So Krishna arranged for that. So all these points, when we're studying Krishna lila, Ram lila, there may be many doubts that arise. And even people, they create doubts because they're demons. And they have so many accusations. Nowadays it's quite common. You see how Ram, he mistreated his wife. No one thought such a thing. But now that's become quite a common idea. So we should understand why did Ram have to suffer? People say, well, better be Ravana. At least he got killed ultimately, but he was having a good time all his life, and then anyway he got killed anyway, he had to die, so whereas this Ram, he just suffered all his life. What's the point? Better, live a short life and have fun. People may say, why did Ram apparently suffer? Well, one thing that we can understand from this is that even though Ram apparently suffered, but he never deviated from the path of dharma. So there's a lesson for all of us, that if we're in this world, we have all kinds of things which we can't imagine. We'll have to suffer. It's not, you see, just like that. I didn't predict that someone's cell phone would go off and disturb this class, but just to prove the point that because you can't turn your cell phones off. It's not a major suffering, but it is a disturbance. So, the very nature of this world is such that at any time, without any warning, all our plans can be completely spoiled. Everyone was so happy in Ayodhya that Ram was going to be crowned. And it just said, this is wonderful. But due to the envy of one person, so much suffering was caused. So this envy is very bad. Envy means to be parasukha dukhi, paradukha sukhi. Happy at others' distress and distressed at others' happiness. So because of that, so much suffering was caused. So Rama, of course, he's the Supreme Lord. If he wanted, he could just, he could have made Manthara go dumb. Or he could have allowed Bharat to cut off Manthara's head. And Bharat, even if Ram would have allowed him or told him, he would have cut off even his own mother's head. He wasn't happy at all with Kaikeyi. But Rama tolerated. And alright, whatever, we'll accept that. So this is Maryada Purushottam. There's a lesson that even if we're on the path of doing what is right, even if, of course our situation is different because what suffering we get, that is caused by our own previous actions. We should understand like that. But we should know that suffering will come. It's inevitable. We shouldn't be surprised. We are surprised because we think, when things are going nicely, we think, it'll go on like this forever. But inevitably, there will be so many difficulties. And even, you see, Rama, his difficulty was caused by someone he couldn't imagine, Kaikeyi, his mother. He called her mother. He treated her with no less respect and affection than his own mother. He didn't think of her as different. The brothers, they didn't think that we're all brothers of different sons. They just thought we're all brothers and we all have 3 mothers. So it was unimaginable that from one so close and so loved, such envy overnight without any reason. It was just absurd. The idea that Mantra put into the mind of Kaikeyi, that Rama would oppress Bharat, just absurd. Didn't make any sense. Sometimes we are, why are such and such people doing like that, or saying like that, or behaving like that? Sometimes you just have to say, well, it doesn't really make any sense, but what can we do? That's the way it is. We have to live like that. What can we do? There's no use to try and reason with people who are unreasonable. And we may just have to fold our hands and say, Hare Rama, Sabgo Sannati De Bhagavan, in the words of who Mahatma Gandhi popularized that. So that is the nature of this world. Faultless people. Actually, you see, just like Krishna was and is criticized. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was and is criticized. Prabhupada, who acted only for the benefit of others, was and is criticized. So what to speak of little persons like ourselves? This is one of the many, many lessons we can learn from the ideal character of Lord Rama. And actually, if we go through and discuss, we'll find in every line and every word there's so much for our edification, so much to learn. I'll finish there. I'm supposed to finish at 1 o'clock. Is there any question, please?